know, as a kid, I always loved history stories, and when I was homeschooling my kids, I realized that I hardly knew our Canadian stories. And I wanted to have a social studies program that would make them just have the joy of learning, that they would just love the stories. And I realized I had to actually go and do that research myself and find those stories. And many Canadians have told me, many parents who are trying to teach their children have said, I hated history and I hated geography when I was going through school, and that's because they were getting it from textbook learning. So in the first curriculum I put together, I took all those living books and put them into a program of study. And what they really do is they inspire the readers and the children just to enjoy the stories and to search out more stories and more history and really gain a love and an understanding of our Canadian history. So 25 years ago, that was the first program I put together. And since then, I've added new publications with revisions and included all the new living books that are being published by publishers today. Since I've come from a Christian perspective, I've reviewed all the resources from a Christian or family perspective. And so parents and teachers can trust the resources, and where there might be some review needed by a parent or a teacher, I've added that warning. I think the joy that I have, first of all, I absolutely love research and I love reading. And so I love to read the stories, and I try to read them all first before I offer them to customers, because I only want to have, as Charlotte Mason has said, worthy books and worthy thoughts and inspiring stories. And so I love the research, I love reading the books, and then when I'm out telling people about books and products, I just love to see their faces light up when they say, oh, my kids and I have read that story and we just loved it. And there absolutely is nothing better, if you're homeschooling or if you're a teacher in a classroom, is engaging the children in stories. I loved when I was homeschooling my kids and we'd sit on the couch and I'd say, okay, that's enough. And they would say, no, turn another page, read more, read more. And that's where the joy comes from, when you've engaged children in stories, when they love them, and then when they go on and find the joy of learning themselves and continue to explore the stories on their own, because you've put that thought and that inspiration in their minds. So that's probably really where the joy comes from. I see people taking every book on the subject and just plotting it into a list, and I know that it takes a lot of review to make sure you're only offering the best materials. And parents and teachers don't have time to review all that, and that's what I've done. So I think my material is trustworthy because I take so much time to review and research and only offer the best. Because the goal is not just to get the content into the student, the goal is to make them love learning, love the stories, and that's what really we're trying to do. And just by offering every book on the subject doesn't accomplish that goal. So that's what I work really hard at, is to make sure that and now I can take the time because my children are grown, so I can take more time to make sure I'm really researching well and have reviewed the products that I'm offering, and so really only the best are being offered out there through my sources. So in the past 20 years, I've been bringing resources to parents and teachers and curriculum guides for using those resources, but the way of the future, I think, is making things even easier by doing learning modules. So I just recently, with the Canadian election, did learning modules on Canadian government, which the parents loved. So they were using a written resource, but then also a learning module where the teaching is right online, it's interactive, and parents and students can interact together. There's still a checklist for the kids, whether they've learned it or not, by doing a downloadable quiz. And I see really doing more learning modules in the future. I had one parent who asked how many, they loved it. Their child had learning disabilities, so it was interactive, it had reading, it had online material, it had quizzes, and they were asking, what more are you doing? I love what I do because I love stories. And I love Canadian history stories. And most Canadians hardly know our own stories. And so I love to bring the Canadian history stories to people, especially Canadians who should know their own material and don't know how fascinating our history is.